Chromatography is basically a separation technique which we commonly use to separate, to detect, to analyze the molecules present in a complex sample in the form of mixture. There may be many molecules present in a sample, but if you want to identify, if you want to detect, if you want to analyze a specific molecule of your interest, then we can use the separation techniques. Broadly, we use two separation techniques for the separation of molecules depending upon the desired properties, and these properties may be the structure, maybe the function, charge, affinity, their size. So depending upon the purpose, we use the separation techniques, and commonly describing there are two types of the separation techniques. One is you can see the chromatography technique, and other is the electrophoresis. So both are separation technologies which separate the molecules, can purify the molecules, we can identify, we can analyze the molecules depending upon their differential properties which separates them from each other. Functionality may be the different, structurally they may be different. So what is chromatography? Chromatography is a separation technique on the basis of differential interaction with the two phases, generally stationary phase and the mobile phase. We can separate the molecules from each other. So the separation may be depending upon the affinity, maybe depending upon the adsorption, ionic interaction, or maybe a size, the molecular size variation. So as we will discuss the various forms of the chromatography, we will discuss one by one all the chromatography techniques. So the basic of the chromatography is the distribution of the partition coefficient, which describes the way in which a particular molecule or the component analyte distribute itself between the two immiscible phases. And these phases are generally can be represented as phase A, phase B, but basically these are two different phases. One is stationary phase and other is mobile phase. In most of the cases, the stationary phase is solid, as while the mobile phase is generally liquid. If we discuss about for example, the liquid chromatography, in this case the stationary phase will be a solid support, it will be a matrix, while the mobile phase will be a suitable solvent, it will be in the liquid form. But in some cases, for example in a gas chromatography, the mobile phase will be a gas, while the stationary phase may be a semi-solid or a liquid form. So it will be discussed later. So how we can define the partition or distribution coefficient? The concentration of the molecule in phase A divided by concentration in phase B. Phase A will be the stationary phase, while the phase B here we will consider it as a mobile phase. These are three basic components of the chromatography. Mobile phase, the phase is composed of liquid in most of the cases, and in case of gas chromatography it will be the gaseous component, or in most of the cases it is a solvent, suitable solvent that is used to move or to which allow this analyte or the solid to be separated to interact with the stationary phase. So next component is stationary phase. It is composed of solid matrix, the suitable solid matrix, a medium, it is a support which reversibly binds, interacts with the analyte to be separated. So stationary phase in most of the cases will be the solid in nature, and the last part will be the analyte, the separated molecules, the analyte or the molecule that need to be separated from the mixture. So this is very basic about the chromatography. So now the chromatography may be a paper chromatography, in which we use a suitable paper as a stationary phase, and the liquids will be the mobile phase. You will spot your sample onto the paper and then allow to move, so the molecules will be separated depending upon their retention factor and the partition coefficient. So and rest of the are column chromatography. You can use ion exchange, gas chromatography, gel permeation, affinity. So these are the major forms of the chromatographies. It may be paper chromatography, column chromatography, adsorption chromatography, partition chromatography, affinity chromatography, ion exchange chromatography, gel permeation chromatography, gas chromatography, hydrophobic interaction chromatography, thin layer chromatography, and HPLC. So you will see that principle of the interaction of the molecule with the stationary phase will be the different. So in all case you will find a very good combination of the stationary phase with the mobile phase. So there will be the loading of the sample, then there will be the running of the sample, there will be the washing in case of the column chromatography. So in paper chromatography and in thin layer chromatography, it is very tough to recover the product after the chromatography, but in case of the other chromatography, you can purify the product as well. So if you want to purify the product, you can retain and you can obtain the purified form of the product. You have to perform the column chromatography. It may be adsorption, partition, affinity, ion exchange, gel permeation. So the basics are very different depending upon their principle. So one by one we will keep discussing. Okay, so now we will discuss the paper chromatography.